Hey guys, thanks for coming together today. We're going to be doing a broker roundtable on invoicing and collections. As always, I like to start off with a message and that, one of our core values, the number one core value is the golden rule. And some of you guys who are sponsored by me will have noticed in that welcome email that you received at the bottom of it, right before the signature, I put in the scripture that references it, which is Matthew 7:12. So in everything do to others as you would have them do to you. And that really, it's the number one core value. I feel like it's probably one of the most important aspects of how I run my business, because this whole business that I've put together has been really to try to help as many people as possible, to try to help them grow their business. I know where I was whenever I started my real estate career, I was heavily reliant on some brokers who their primary focus was, their business, their revenue, and that was their bottom line. And I felt like I wasn't treated the way that I should have been treated. And so I built this business with that in mind. Like, how can I treat agents the way that I would have wanted to have been treated whenever I was building my real estate business? And so that was, one of the things that I really kind of built this company on. And then also it stems from the great commandment, which, the great commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. And then Jesus says that the second is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And we love ourselves. We do everything we can to take care of ourselves and make us as happy and as comfortable as possible. And we should treat other people around us in that same manner. We shouldn't always be thinking about ourselves in a sense that, love ourselves, yes, but love others too, the way that we love ourselves in addition to that. So, and that's what makes us more like Jesus and spreads his glory and his love throughout this world that really, really needs it. And so without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it off to Carla. Carla, I've allowed it to where you can share your screen. So why don't you go ahead and take over? Are you ready to do that? You need to unmute.
There we go. Can you guys hear me? All right, great. So let me figure out what it is. Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to find the video. Oh, is it not? Oh, share screen. All right, guys. So how's everyone doing this morning? So today we are going. Oh, okay, great. I was wondering if my headphones were messed up there for a second. So today I'm going to help you guys with some tips and tricks and just the different processes that we go through doing apartment locating invoices and even residential invoices. So today's topic is Carla's secret sauce for getting you paid, because obviously you guys work really hard for your money. We want you to get paid as fast as possible. Now, there are some things that can make payment take a little bit longer or things like that. So what I really want you guys to do is I'm going to go through the entire invoicing and collections process. So everything from what happens to when a file is placed in lease confirmed, what happens when the file's in invoice status. Like, I know sometimes they sit there for a while and y'all are like, okay, come on, what's going on? It's been there forever. And just so that way you guys know, like, hey, this is her system. That it just looks like it's sitting in invoice status, but she really is working on it. Or any other AR user. And also I'm going to go over some of the invoicing platforms that we use. There are actually quite a few of them out there, and they also have bill boxes that we would email the invoices to. And some properties have specific bill box numbers for that property. And I take care of all of that and gather all that information and make sure everything gets into the right spot. And also, we're going to go over some reasons it may take you a little bit longer to get paid. Sometimes there are things that are out of our control that may take a little bit longer for you guys to get paid. And I'm also going to give you guys some tips and tricks on things that would ensure that you get help paid like the fastest possible for that property, whether it be, making sure you have a signed lease verification uploaded and things like that. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. At the end, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions as well in case somebody has any. All right. So what happens after you put your file into lease confirmed status? The AR user, which in this case would be me or whoever does the invoicing, can now see it on our side. Before then, if it's impending or hot or cold, we don't see it. We cannot, it doesn't show up on our dashboard. And then after that happens, the client goes to lease confirmed status. And if they're waiting to move in, I go ahead and check all the documents that are uploaded and set the follow-up date for the day after they move in, because we want to make sure that they got moved into their apartment before we just start sending invoices. And the invoice info box, it tells me the number of clients that I will be following up with on that day. Now, as soon as you put it in your file into lease confirmed, then that number will automatically add on to my number of move-ins that I need to follow up on that day. And then after I do that, and I get it all through the lease confirmed, then the day after the lease starts, I send over the invoice. I also double check all the documents and make sure they're there, especially with residential houses. I know residential leases, I know there's sometimes a lot of paperwork involved and sometimes it doesn't all get uploaded. So we just kind of double check and make sure everything's good to go. And then depending on the company, this is where the platforms come in. I either have to upload the invoice to the platform. Some of them I have, the AR user has to create an entire invoice. And then some of them you have to combine the invoice, the broker's license, and Spirit Real Estate Group's W-9 and send all in one PDF and then send it over to the bill box, like Avid Bill or Avid Pay. I believe another one is the cash box. And you'll see it looks really funny on the notes because it'll be like regular R cash and then have like this huge number behind it. Or it'll be the property, like this one says Madera Residential. It'll say Madera Residential at avidbill.com. That is the address for an Avid Bill box. Sometimes people know this ahead of time. Sometimes you don't. And you never know what you're going to come up into on the first day after move-in. I try my best to keep this updated to keep the entire database updated. So I know where to send these invoices. But if a property changes management companies or ownership, sometimes that may change as well. And while the file is in invoice status, I will follow it up, or I'm sorry, it will be followed up on a weekly basis at least. Now, sometimes, or if they're taking a lot longer to pay than what I feel they should be, like if we worked with this property quite a few times, or they're non-responsive, I will follow up with them more often. And if I speak with someone or I get an email from them, I may adjust the follow-up date based on the conversation. So if I have for example, 60-day pay property, I send the invoice and 2 days later, they send me back, hey, this was received, we'll pay after 60 days. If I email them every week, after the end, or if the invoice is re-emailed every week, at the end of it, or even a quarter of the way through it, the manager will either stop looking at the emails and just be like, oh, it's just trash. Or, and some of them have like emailed me back and said, hey, you followed up on this every week. There's absolutely no reason for that, and get kind of snippety. Now, the management companies do have different pay dates. Some of them are, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days that the client has to live there before they even begin to process the invoice. So that's not whenever you get paid. That's before they send it over to corporate to process it. Then corporate has to process it, and it's more than likely going to take at least 30 to 45 days after that, whenever we actually receive payment in the office. I know it sounds like forever. Some of them we actually receive in under 60 days, some payments. Some of them I've received like 2 weeks after I invoice. It really just depends on the company and how they're invoiced. So if they're being invoiced incorrectly, then of course the property is not going to get the invoice, and they will think whenever you send it 3 weeks later that it's a brand new invoice, and it is not. So that's some kind of things to look up for. Sometimes the checks come from the corporate office. That right there can add at least another 2 weeks before the mailing time. They do batch check runs where they only cut checks on certain days of the month. Some of the invoicing platforms that we use are Ops Technology, Vendor, that's supposed to be Vendor Cafe. I'm so sorry. Entrata. We also use Vendor Access, RealPage, Vendor Credentialing, and Nexus. There are a few other ones that we use, but those are the main invoicing platforms. RealPage and Vendor Credentialing, that is where they keep up with all of our compliance documents, and we have an ID through them that we have to provide in order for them to the property to set up a PO. So that's kind of pretty important that we stay on top of that one. And just about all of those, you have to have an invite. If it's a new property, we haven't worked for it before, or we haven't sent anyone out to before, we will have to request an invite either from the property or from corporate. Sometimes they have somebody at every property that can send one. Sometimes you have to wait and you have to go to corporate, and then we have to get a hold of that person to send the invite. So I can go and set up the account in order to upload the invoice, if that makes any sense. A lot of places will also require, like if they send you packets, they call them vendor packets, and you send those to me, a lot of places will require those to be filled out. They also want a copy of our W-9, our broker's license, and our certificate of insurance. Now, the certificate of insurance does vary from management company to management company. And they also want like the signed agreement in between the property management company and Spirit Real Estate Group, which is what I call the vendor packets. Is anyone confused or anything like that? I know it can get really confusing and I talk in circles. So if I go too fast, just let me know, okay? So some of the reasons that a property might take a little bit longer to pay, change in management or ownership. We've also had issues with some properties changing ownership or management, and then they refuse to pay. There could be personnel changes. I know there's been a few properties that have gone through like probably 10 managers in the last 2 years. And every time a manager changes, it takes them 2 or 3 weeks to get caught up and get access to the emails to even be able to process an invoice. The check could get lost in the mail or sent to the wrong address. I do try to verify that our Richardson address is the correct one to send the payment to. Some properties, they have someone else doing their invoicing, and whatever address is registered, and even if it's an old one, it could be is where the check will be sent to. And some of them may have funding issues. We've had this happen with Weiner invoices. They actually went and they filed bankruptcy while I was trying to collect on a couple of invoices from them. And it was definitely challenging. Sometimes the property goes non-responsive. So if that happens, I always escalate it. I take it up the ladder, whether it be calling corporate, or if I have the accounting department's phone number, email. I've gone all the way up to the owner of S2 before, just to try to get some of these invoices paid. Now, S2 residential is pretty bad about being non-responsive, not necessarily not paying their bills, but being non-responsive. I've had a couple of properties that will not say anything back, no confirmed, will not answer the phone when they're called, and then a check just shows up 45 days later. So, I mean, that just kind of depends on, I'm guessing, the management or the manager. The person in charge of the accounting is either on leave or vacation. I actually encountered this, I believe it was last week. So I had been trying to reach out to the one person that does accounting for the Contour. And they always said, oh, she's not here. She's not here. Come to find out, she works from home and she is out on maternity leave currently. So, and they have no one else to fill her slot. So that could be another reason. Here's a big one at the bottom. The client did not list the locator and Spirit Real Estate Group on the application. I know we do sponsor quite a few LLCs, but somewhere on the lease verification, it needs to have either the invoices will be sent from Spirit Real Estate Group, or this is powered by Spirit Real Estate Group. So whenever I call to do collections and I say, hey, it's with Spirit Real Estate Group, and they're like, we have no idea who that is. None. So yeah, you're not on the application.
Hey, let me jump in there.
Yes, sir.
Point of clarification on that. These are just for agents who are sponsored by Spirit Real Estate Group. Carla primarily just does invoicing collections for Spirit Real Estate Group. And so that point is just for agents sponsored by us. If you're sponsored by one of the entities that I sponsor, that is separate. So you guys would only have your name and then the entity's name, like Money Move or Realm Agency or one of the other apartment locating firms that we sponsor. You would have their business name as the firm name on those application and guest cards. So do not list Spirit Real Estate Group unless you are sponsored by Spirit Real Estate Group. And then we do have a few people who have kind of their own branding, their group name or team name. They are sponsored by Spirit Real Estate, but they're using their group or team name, in which case you still need to have the brokerage name on there in order for us to be able to collect on that. But that's only, again, if you're sponsored by Spirit Real Estate Group. Okay, just wanted to add that in there. You may continue.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so some of the ways that can help you get paid the fastest. Always have a signed lease verification. I cannot stress that enough. A lot of times when an opt-out form is uploaded, I get pushback, or I'm sorry, the AR user gets pushback and the property refuses to pay it. And if it's only an opt-out form, there's nothing we can do about it. Our hands are completely tied. The signed lease verification is the contract that says, hey, this property and this management company is going to pay this locator this amount of money. It has to have a commission rate on there and who it's for as well. You can write up a guest card and send it, over to the property, even if it's not required. If you do that, then you have backup proof. Hey, I made 4 appointments with you for John Doe to see apartment 334 on Tuesday. Thank you so much for your help. And that will prove like, hey, there was my proof that I made those appointments. If they do come back with you're not on the application. Before you set your appointments, always ask them if they're still working with locators. I know we cannot avoid if there's a switch in between the management companies, in between the time that your client went to go look and leased. But some of the data sites, whether it be Smart Apartment Data, apartmentdata.com, sometimes they don't update their stats. And if they're not updating their stats, then you could just be getting old information. And if you are, and they no longer work with realtor or locators, then you would be wondering, hey, why aren't they paying my invoice? Well, they haven't worked with locators in the last year. That's just an old posting. So it's just kind of some extra precautions. Number 4, I would definitely save all of your communications. I cannot tell you how many times text messages, screenshots of text messages and emails have saved a payment for a locator. There would be, hey, we had no backup proof, and then we started flooding with all the emails, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and pay it because this clearly states that you guys were kind of working with her. Always make sure your name is on the application, and whichever your designated broker or LLC is, whether it be Spirit Real Estate Group or the Dave Ivy Group or the Modern Move, something like that. So then that way, and if possible, see if they will send you a picture of where they put it on the application. Then you're gonna place it in lease confirmed, and I will take it from there. Or I'm sorry, the AR user will take it from there. I think I got too used to working alone. So today we went over how your file gets invoiced, some of our processes from lease confirmed to paid out, why some things may take a little bit longer, and just kind of general time break and extra tips to just kind of make sure that you receive the fastest payment possible. Once the payment is received in the office, I change the status to pay received, and then the AR user's job is done. After that, then accounting, or well, Brian picks it up. Is there any questions or anything?
Thank you, Carla.
My pleasure.
We'll open it up for questions now. If y'all have anything for Carla. I've got one to start off with. So there were a couple of other vendor services that weren't mentioned, like Net Vendor and RMIS. I do want to add that, you know, some of those are paid. Some of them, well, most of them actually do cost money, whether it's paying just to be approved to work with that vendor. And then some of them are paying for just submitting invoices. So for instance, Ops Technology, we pay for a packet of like 150 invoices, and that allows us to submit invoices. And so once those run out, then we have to buy more, and that's how they basically collect their money. And then RMIS and vendor credentialing, we're paying to be approved to work with those particular entities. So for instance, like Carroll Management or Lincoln Property Company is with RMIS, we have to pay an annual fee just to be able to work with those for the year. And then they will ask us to submit updated W-9s, broker's licenses, our insurance. So there's two types of insurance. There's E&O insurance, of which some of them require that. Some of them require our general liability insurance, although it doesn't cover our agents working on their property. So usually whenever they ask for our general liability policy, we'll provide them a copy of what we have. But if they want to be like named as insured, we do not do that, because for the most part, our agents are send only, which means you guys are just sending your clients there. You're not physically going on the premises frequently. And so we shouldn't be paying for insurance for our agents to, you know, visit the property. That's more for, you know, like HVAC companies or electric companies, where their business is to go to the property and do work on their property. So they will sometimes loop in locating companies with that, and we have to go and get like basically an exemption from that particular rule. But they'll have us submit all these different things and just to be approved. And we're approved with basically all the major companies that are out there. We have over 400 management companies that we worked with, and over 4,000 properties in Texas. But aside from that, so how this, you know, some of you may already know this, but Carla, she's the one who really runs into this. How frequently do properties change management companies?
Since I started working here, I would have to say probably once every 4 or 5 months. I know every now and then you get the property that's had the same management company forever. And then sometimes you have properties that it seems like they're changing management every other week. So on average, I would say probably every 3 to 4 months.
So you're saying one property changes its management company every 3 to 4 months, or that's how often you run into a property that's changed its management company?
That's about how often I have run into a property that has changed its management company.
Okay, so
Out of the 4,000 properties that we work with.
gotcha. Okay, so not overly frequent, but it does occur occasionally. Okay, all right, good deal. Does anybody else have any questions for Carla? Dave?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. This is great. Appreciate all the information. I'm interested in knowing whether you know, everything's about diplomacy, professional practices, you know, more bees with honey concept. But, you know, obviously every once in a while we get an invoice, you know, 5 months, 6 months. And it can be because of some of the aforementioned reasons, change of management, people on leave, whatever, it gets lost. However, how often or at all have you actually had to actually go and file a collection or take it to court? Not that that happens very often. I've probably in 25 years had to do it 2 times, maybe 3. But what types of emails and or communications and how often? I mean, I think I'm pretty patient and diplomatic, but I just had to send one out this morning that's getting very frustrating simply because they're not acknowledging our emails. I've driven to the property with the lease verification and invoice in hand. Still no response from the manager. And so what tactics, email templates, do you have anything that you guys would be willing to share that would help us when we encounter this type of situation?
Carla, I'll take that one.
Okay, go ahead.
So, great question, Dave. Basically, so yes, not every property will pay. And if we have a signed lease verification, a commission agreement, we have the correspondence with the agent and the client, we will put together a demand letter that we had drafted years ago by an attorney, and I'll send it via certified mail, and I will email it and even standard mail it. I send it in multiple different ways to get to them. Oftentimes, they will still be adamant about not doing anything, but occasionally on those, like for instance, we had Graystar, we had a collection with Graystar a few years back, and we sent them a demand letter. And I mean, I had just got done paying for certified mail, and the regional of Graystar called me up and said, hey, what do we need to do to get this paid? And so we're happy to share the format of the demand letter that we use if you like. But that demand letter even states in it that failure to respond with this will be used in addition to the evidence provided in court for a small claims. And so we have only at one point in time, so we personally, Spirit Real Estate, we do not file small claims on collections. First of all, it very, very, very rarely happens to go to that place. I think we've had maybe 3 or 4 demand letters go out over the years that we've been doing this. For the most part, if it goes to write-off status, it's because of a property that's gone out of business and they've either negotiated with us or figured out some way to get us paid. We've had some that have paid after 1.5 years, 2 years of continually following up. But there was one time where we had an agent, and I will support those who need it. They went and they took the evidence that we compiled along with the demand letter. They filed a small claim at Dallas County Courthouse, and I think it was like $25 or something like that as a filing fee. I'm sure it's different in Houston. There's probably a different form and fee, but once you do that, they will the company that's being sued will receive an e-file, and they get notification from the county courthouse of pending litigation against them. And that whenever that happened, we received a phone call that day that, hey, we want to get this resolved. What do we need to do to pay this off and get it done? Because they don't want to get sued. And especially if we have a signed lease verification and proof that that we did everything on our part to collect it, they're in a corner at that point. If they go to court and a judge awards us, they can award us other penalties as well. So most of the time they will just settle because we've already got the evidence compiled. I've never actually had one go to standing up in front of a judge. And I offer that. We're happy to support, anybody who's willing to go all the way if they need to, but in each situation, the management company has either called to, come to some type of compromise to get it paid and settled. In that one instance where the business was going bankrupt, that I think it was a year, they called Carla and they were like, okay, look, we'll pay you 10 cents on the dollar. And we responded and said, no, 50 cents on the dollar is the best we're going to do. And we confirmed with the agent before that happened, and he said it was okay. And so we got 50 cents on the dollar. We sent that over and they responded, okay, we'll do that. So, we're going to fight and do everything we can as long as we have that commission agreement. Without that, there really isn't much recourse that you can do, because there's nothing that's, binding them to pay you off.
Yeah, I've kind of been through something similar, so I appreciate that. There was a thought I had. I've done that a couple. Well, no, I've probably sent out more demand letters and I've had very positive response as a result. I've never had to go to court either. I think I've only had one invoice two that never paid in all these years. So it's not that I'm concerned necessarily about getting it that far. It's more about after diplomacy, well, always diplomacy, but after being nice and patient and understanding and professional, at some point, I've put together some demand letters and I think they're reasonably, good. They're forceful, but still professional and still looking for a solution. But yeah, I think whatever demand letter you have, I would be grateful if you could share that. The other thing is when and if we need to CC, do you ever CC the registered agent? Because it's one thing, right? We're suing the management company, right? Or not suing. We're alerting or sending the demand letter to the management company. Is there any, does it strengthen it by also adding the registered agent and or owner on there? And if so, how do you go about, other than going to I know sometimes it's hard to find the registered agent for a particular community. I don't know if that's important. Do you ever do that? Or do you not even take it that far? You just basically CC the management company or send it to the management company?
I mean, we've always in the past just sent it to the management company and the property, both of them together. I actually like the idea of the registered agent. I think you would be able to find that through the comptroller website, because usually the comptroller website has the physical address of the registered agent available there. So you could send correspondence or any type of legal notice to their registered agent. However, I will say that the Texas Secretary of State allows people to be self-registered agents. So I don't know if it would necessarily go to the right location every time, but I do know that those entities that use the registered agent services, of which I do, will receive a notification from that registered agent. Hey, a legal notice has been filed. Here's a copy of it, and they get notice. The higher ups would get notice of that, and I actually like that. That's a good idea. I'll have to consider that the next time we run into the demand letter. Something that you had said that I would like to make a point of, and let Carla speak on it, which is the more you get more with honey. So
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always said, and I like to tell people, is that we are kind and persistent. And I know Carla, she's my frontline person whenever it comes to that. So Carla, why don't you tell me how often do you get upset and how do you handle it whenever a property is not being very accommodating?
Well, actually, it kind of depends on the property. If If they're just non-responsive, I will go and find any email that I have for a person that I know works at that property. And I mean, I will send them an email and be like, hey, I understand this may not be yours. Is there any way that you can give me the contact information to whoever this needs to go to? If that still doesn't work, like if I need to escalate it to the corporate office, I automatically speak to the operator and I tell them, hey, I need to speak with accounts management, accounts receivables, accounts payable. I'm polite about it, but I am stern. And whenever you say it that way, 9 times out of 10, they're going to send you to the voicemail or they're going to send you straight to the accounting department. Always make sure that you have which property you're calling about. Now we did have the instance with S2 where it was just completely non-responsive. I believe I was trying to collect on an invoice for, what was it, a little over a year or something like that. And it was whenever I very first came in, I really just started Googling any website that I could put in, information to get an email back. I would do it. I called all the numbers that I could find for them. And it's tedious, very, very tedious. But eventually, I'd say maybe a week later, the actual owner is the one that emailed me back and ended up paying the batch worth of invoices that we had for S2 properties. I will take it all the way up, but you definitely want to escalate in steps and kind of match their energy. So I've had issues where the property was not so professional or nice. And then I'm speaking to their regional manager. A lot of times that's a good way to get things done as well. And as far as they know, like I'm just kind of calling out of the blue. So they have no idea what's going on. And they're like, wait, don't, take this out on me. I'm so sorry. I never even got it. So that's whenever, if they're polite, then I start out polite. I kind of try to match, I suppose, their attitude on it, if that makes any sense, but professionally. And I've had some pretty snarky people. But overall, like if they're not cooperating, I always just go over their head, build a ladder for whichever management company I'm having to deal with, and just start putting in all the phone numbers, email addresses. There's been times I've sent out probably 10 emails regarding the same invoice to 10 different people in one day. And try following up on different days as well. I've noticed that if you call them on the same day every week, sometimes they won't answer. So it helps to kind of move it around and mix it up a little bit.
That's actually a good point. Some of y'all may have noticed where there's actually a good time during the day to get signed lease verifications. Typically it's after they've already opened, it's in the morning time before lunchtime. Because whenever you call during lunchtime or the afternoons, either they're not there or they're too busy. And so you're less likely to get those back. And it's similar with invoicing and collections, trying to get a hold of the manager or assistant manager, whoever handles the invoicing. You want to call at different times and different days to try to reach those particular people. If you're always calling on the same day at the same time and you're getting the same result, then you're kind of just doing it to yourself at that point. I really like that input that you put there, as well as, you may be willing to go over people's heads, but we're always factual and we're not letting emotion get involved. And that's where you can find yourself in a tough situation. If you start to let the emotions get the better of you and you start getting angry. I've had an agent who worked for me years ago who she sent a very nasty email to a property on behalf of our company, and she was talking about how this is unacceptable, you guys are unprofessional. I mean, saying all of these awful things. And the manager called me and was like, if I see anything like this again, I will talk to my corporate and we will ban Spirit Real Estate Group from all of our properties. And that's the type of thing that I've seen before whenever I worked over at U3, where it was one agent who caused Milestone Management to not work with You Move Free, and it was over an invoice not getting paid in a particular time. And it's not that you shouldn't be upset. Everybody, it's perfectly allowable to be upset that it's taking too long to get paid. But whenever you start directing that anger at a property, just at whoever is in the way of your anger, that's where unprofessionalism will start to be seen on our side of it and not theirs. And we don't want that, because properties will ban. Right now, all properties that pay locators will pay us, even the ones that take forever. There are some properties that are very difficult to get paid from, but at the end of the day, they do pay us. We don't have any that we blacklist, and they don't blacklist us. And I think it's because of our policies whenever it comes to being professional with the properties and making sure that we're mending and taking care of that relationship, because they're the ones who are paying our bills. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take care of that relationship. Even whenever they're being difficult, we still will, be kind, be persistent, stern when necessary, but still professional. So, well, that's great. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you.
If,
Go ahead.
Brian, I'm sorry, I was gonna wait to see if anybody else had any questions. There's, one other thing. I get this a lot. And what we're doing, I don't know what database y'all use to send, or agents use to send apartment list to clients. But I continue to use ADS. I won't go as to why, but I've been using it so long, but it's obviously got some disadvantages. So we do everything we can to, like, when we put a list together, we hit a little button that says register. Then we actually email through the database registering the client. When we call the property, we keep notes in our CRM, who we spoke to. We even can record those calls if allowed. And then of course, so we're documenting a lot of stuff, but then a lot of times I'm hearing, and I'm wondering if there's something I'm just not aware of. They'll say, send over a guest card. And I noticed in Carla's presentation, she said, put together a guest card. So in essence, I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing. Like, I'll even, when we're checking availability, I'll ask the agent, would you please go ahead and start a guest card, or put the client's information in your system, and that way you can note that we are the referral source. I may or may not give the client's phone number, but I'll at least give an email address. That's what I'm doing to, quote unquote, get a guest card. But is there something y'all are sending digitally, or something you've printed up that you're faxing, or I know faxing sounds outdated, that you're emailing over? What do and what I'm doing sound about to covers what basically y'all are doing to send over, quote unquote, send over a guest card?
Yes, great question. Basically, we do have a guest card that we have a preformed. I'm sharing that on my screen right now, where it'll have your client's information, what they're looking for, and then also who the referral agent is and their contact information. I have agents, I think Adam Jaffe is even on this call, where he basically just sends an email to the property with less than this information, but he sends out an email to the property and calls it a guest card. And he even follows up to confirm that they received a guest card. So this information, I'm sure you're aware, at the properties, if they don't have this, they'll basically collect this data to put it into whatever CRM that they're using there on site, to add them as a potential client, a prospect, whatever it may be. So they use this guest card information. So if we provide this to them and it includes who it was referred by, they will automatically put it in the system who the referral was. And so the guest card is super handy at making sure that your name is put down as the referral source before they even go fill out an application. You can certainly have one that you create yourself. This is just one that's available in the agent portal that you can use as a template. Some of this information, you don't have to necessarily share every bit of this. I pulled this from a guest card at a property years and years and years ago. And so I just created our own, but you can, create one yourself for David the Locator and send this to the properties whenever you want to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. And that's honestly, anything that y'all are willing to share there is helpful. I appreciate that. And that's kind of what I imagined. We'll just put something together that looks nice like that.
Yeah.
We're doing all we can, like you said, just to take ownership and to prove procuring cause. So yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Good. So, I will say that especially last year, when the market was really leaning towards apartments where the demand was just stupid. All of them were at maximum occupancy, basically. They're dropping their commissions and they're even wiggling, trying to find ways to not pay commissions to us. That was last year. I will say that things have started to get better. I've started to see properties increasing their commissions up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're not as difficult to get paid, but you still want to be vigilant. The things that we learned last year was that it really is important to have a guest card over to the property that with their information and verifying that they received it before even sending the client to the property. And that got you paid almost every single time in a very short time, where there's no more pushback, there's no more fighting, that kind of thing. Even with signed verifications, we're having some properties being difficult. But whenever there was a guest card that was sent to the property beforehand, there was a lot less pushback. So I would highly encourage the use of a guest card or something similar to this, where you're just basically verifying that you're sending a client to a property prior to them visiting the property themselves. So, all right, well, great. Thank you so much for joining, guys. This will be uploaded to the YouTube channel and our agent portal as well. So if you guys ever need to refresh on this, if you have any questions about our invoicing collections process, it'll be available to you, and just let me know. Thank you, and y'all have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. You have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks.